This feels like, at least to a certain degree, some of this is experimentation. Like
definitely,
we know from the story of John Money and what he did to what was it, Brian and David? Were their
Brian
names?
and David.
They both ended up killing themselves in different ways.
Yes.
And it's a horror story. Now that story is particularly horrifying because John Money was forcing them to simulate adult activities on each other when they were very young children.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar with the story, I think most people are, but if you're not, basically you had twins. I think they're identical twins. Were they?
They were identical.
Yeah, and there was a botched circumcision. So John Money convinced the parents, we'll raise one as a girl and one as a boy. And then I think almost immediately, it was Brian, or was it was David?
David.
David was the one who was made to live as a girl. David knew that he was actually male the whole time, and it caused great distress. So that's my fear. In that thinking, though, there is the argument made by the left that shows gender identity is inherent in the individual, and that if a child is born male but has a female identity or wants to identify socially as a female and you don't do it, you'll end up with that situation.
Well, I have a kind of an unusual take for someone on the right. I'm definitely on the right. And that I do think gender is in many ways socially constructed. And this always freaks people out, right? Like, well, how can you be a right winger and believe that? But
the social characteristics that we have built up around the biological sexes.
Correct, yeah. And in other words, you're born male, but you have to learn to be a man. Your father teaches you how to be a man. You follow in the footsteps of your forefathers, and you learn how to be a man to assume your duties and rights and responsibilities as a man in your society. And that has to be taught to you, right? That kind of thing has to be taught to you. But like everything else, the left wants to make it either or in these very strange ways. Sure, there is a genetic component probably to gender identity. There's a genetic component to all human behaviors, right? It comes up a lot in the context of being gay. People say, well, people are born gay. They're not born gay. There is a genetic component to being gay. They know exactly what the genetic contribution is because billions of dollars have been spent on it. It's approximately equal to your food preferences, and you're totally in control of what you eat. So there's just because something has a genetic component doesn't mean it's outside of your volition.
Yeah, your genetics can be altered by your environment. They can be turned on and off.
Yes. I think this is phthalates and PCBs. There was I've had the conversation with a lot of conservatives, and
you're bringing up good stuff. This is exactly.
Yeah, we've had people on. I think even James Lindsay, and I've talked to a lot of these people who say there's no such thing as trans kids, and I say I disagree with that. I think we've already seen the stories. There was a birth control that women were taking that resulted in their female babies masculinizing in the womb, and then invariably as they tracked them, they grew up to become lesbians, and they're like, hey, we just realized that this birth control was actually doing this to the babies in the womb.
Yes.
In the event the woman got pregnant, despite being on birth control, they had masculinized female babies. And so you take a look at the plastics. This is why we've been using glass bottles for all our water. We do have plastic bottles because some people just don't care, but I prefer to put everything in glass because you have phthalates and PCBs, and that's just a couple of the endocrine disruptors that we've got research on. So my hypothesis on this is, you had Bill Maher who said, why are we seeing so many trans kids? You've got so many in California, but not in Ohio. So either, what did he say? Either there's something wrong between the states or we're creating them or something to that effect. And I'm wondering if the reason we're seeing a massive spike in this is, I do think there's a social component because we've actually seen that in research. But I think another component of this may be that we've expanded the use of plastics. Plastic is over everything.
It is.
So phthalates and PCBs in all of our food. Then you've also had these stories about birth control getting in the water supply. Can't be filtered out, and then people are drinking it. I think we are living in piles of our own filth in cities, which is making dirty water full of endocrine disruptors of any kind. And you're going to end up with people who are in the womb developing, and their brains are forming, and either through some kind of hormonal imbalance, some kind of chemical alteration through phthalates, a baby is born and they have an inverted gender identity that doesn't match their body.